Thank you, Mr. Kernian. I now have the honor of introducing today's guest speaker, Admiral Brett P. Giroir of the class of 1978. At Jesuit, Mr. Giroir was a member of the Marine Corps Junior ROTC and commanding officer of the drill team his senior year. He and his partner, Moises Arriaga, also won city, state, and national championship in high school debate. After Jesuit, he earned his bachelor's degree, magna cum laude, in biology from Harvard University, where he was National Merit Scholar and Harvard Scholar, and his medical degree from University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center in Dallas. Following medical school, he specialized in pediatric critical care and trauma medicine, and served in various roles at UT Southwestern, including professor and endowed chair in pediatrics and associate dean for clinical affairs. Later in his career, he also served as vice chancellor for research for the Texas A&M University System and CEO of the Texas A&M Health Science Center. But Brett Giroir is most known for his federal government service. In the mid-2000s, he served as deputy director, then director of the science office at DARPA, the Defense Department agency that brought us internet, stealth, GPS, and during his tenure, the brain-controlled bionic arm and autonomous vehicles on land, sea, and air. Most recently, in the Trump administration, he served as the 16th Assistant Secretary for Health in the United States Department of Health and Human Services, acting FDA Commissioner, and Admiral in the United States Public Health Service Commission Corps. He also served as U.S. Representative to the Executive Board of the World Health Organization within the Department of State. And we've all seen him numerous times on national media as a member of the White House Coronavirus Task Force and the testing czar. Admiral Giroir has received numerous awards, including the American Society of Nephrology Presidential Medal, the American Society of Hematology Outstanding Public Service Award, the Society of Federal Healthcare Professionals Tip of the Spear Leadership Award, and the Society of Critical Care Medicine Founders Special Recognition Award. His uniform service decorations include the United States Public Health Distinguished Service Medal with Gold Star attachment, the Meritorious Service Medal, the Surgeon General's Medallion, the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response Pinnacle Medal, the Global Health Campaign Medal, the Presidential Unit Citation, and the Secretary of Defense Medal for Outstanding Public Service. He and his wife Jill have been married for 37 years and have 2 children and 2 grandchildren. Please welcome Admiral Giroir.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction, and I can tell you there is nothing better than being in a room full of Blue Jays back here in New Orleans. So this is an awesome experience. Thank you very much. Thank you, Father Brown, Mike Prados, and I'm sorry I still call him Mr. Grau because he was Mr. Grau when I was a student, but he invited me 3 years ago, and I don't think any of us would have imagined what would cause a 3-year delay, most being, of course, the COVID pandemic, but we're here. So this is a really joyous and blessed day that you're graduating, but also that we can get together again and share this incredible moment, this fellowship that we have with each other. And I know that you're not going to remember much from this, so I'm going to tell the seniors, and I'm really talking to the seniors, the 2 things I want you to remember. I'm not there yet. Hold on. I'll let you know when it comes. But I do want to congratulate you. You don't realize yet what an achievement it is to graduate Jesuit High School in New Orleans. And I do mean that. I've had a lot of education since. I've had a lot of experiences. But what you've just been through is the greatest time of your life and some of the hardest, most challenging times of your life. And it's going to be with you as you go on. It's emblazoned in your heart, in your mind, and in your spirit. And I'll get to that in a second. When I look back on some of the things I remember, and I have some of the class there, and by the way, Mickey Bordes has not changed one bit since 1978. He's still the exact same person. I remember some of the things you do. I grew up on the West Bank. Marrero is just a little small town, and I, through some unusual circumstances, got to be a student at Jesuit. So it was a little bit different for me, but I remember the first day I wore my khakis and showed up with 1,000 other boys and young men about what it felt like to be part of that group. And I felt from that moment on, and I didn't know it would last for the next 44 years, but from that moment on, there were going to be people all around me that wanted me to be successful. They weren't competing with me, they were there to help me. And you got that feeling the moment you walked in the door, and I hope you all felt that the same way I did. We were very excited about pep rallies. I hope you still have pep rallies. Do you still smash cars? I don't know. We used to have car smashing, 50 cents a whack. It was the way to raise money. Maybe you don't do that anymore, but it was a lot of fun. And the band was playing, and just to date me a little bit, when I was a freshman, it was the first year there were actually females in the pep squad. So we got very excited about that change as well. Coach Sam Hornsenkram, he left before all of you guys, but Coach Sam was a legendary wrestling coach. I know a lot of people in my era know him, and I think you remember that Coach Sam was an incredible wrestling coach and an incredible human being, but he could not pronounce Cajun names at all. So Giroir was completely out of his vocabulary, so he decided my name was Gore. And literally that name stuck. So everybody called me Gore. When I eventually got a car, my license plate had Gore on it. And it got to be just a joke around campus. I couldn't eat a sandwich. It was always a Gorewich. It got ridiculous, but it was a lot of fun. And in debate was also fun because we traveled a lot. We had an orange van that never met inspection, but somehow we got to keep driving in it. And it wasn't so much a debate, but it was being around the other students and working together and learning together. These are all great experiences that I'm sure you've had. But I also know the experiences you've had studying. I've been able to do a few things, but I had as much trouble with physics and chemistry as just about anybody. Those were very, very tough classes. And to date myself, and this is true, we took physics in our freshman year. We used slide rules. We didn't have calculators. Can you believe that? Because calculators were way too expensive and they were just coming out. So we had our slide rule and we learned how to do that, but all that did really pay off. So, and the other thing I remember, and I want to say that before I get into the first thing, is I remember, and I still remember these vividly, the masses at Jesuit. They were so incredibly special on two extremes. One is when the whole student body got together, and I know you have those where you have 1,000 people in the same room and it's just magnificent. But also the small masses we had in the chapel frequently before school every day. And it was a time just to be sort of intimately speaking to our Lord, worshiping in a quiet way that really set the stage for the rest of the day, the rest of the week, the rest of the month. And it was hard getting from the West Bank, but I remember trying to get there at like 7 o'clock in the morning to do that. That was an important part of my experience. So, okay, you could pay attention now. The first thing I want you to remember, and this is for the students in the class of 2022, but also the alumni will absolutely affirm this, is that your Jesuit education is part of you forever. It's in your heart, it's in your mind, it's in your soul, and it will always be there and you can call on it. And that's something I want you to remember. And I call on it all the time, through hard times, through good times. And believe me, when the pandemic started, we had an unknown virus from China. We didn't know how it was transmitted. We didn't have any medications. We didn't have any vaccines. We didn't have any tests. The country was scared. We might have run out of food. We could have had millions of deaths. And it was scary for everybody. But I went back to the roots that I had, the foundation that I had. I looked back because my Jesuit education was always a part of me. And there were so many things that I reflected on that I knew I could get through it. I'll just make a couple of comments. Two are kind of obvious, and one, the third one's even obvious too, but some of the things that were so important, and I want to emphasize is self-discipline. The self-discipline you learn will be with you forever, and you can count on it. And I started with my self-discipline really understanding that when I went to college. I was the first person to go to college in my family. I had the opportunity to go to Harvard. I didn't know any better. I went there. Seemed like a good idea. But 90% of the kids had better scores than I did. They'd been prepping for all those classes, more vigorously than I did. They'd been to all the prep schools, but they didn't have the self-discipline. When you come from Jesuit, you've been studying your entire career. You know that hard work pays off, that it's not about taking the easy way, it's about achieving quality. And that self-discipline that you have will stay with you forever, and it allowed me to get through college, to get through medical school. And when COVID hit, and it was 20 hours a day, 7 days a week for a year, I knew that I could rely on all the things I learned from Jesuit to get me through it. Second thing that gets you through that's very important that I rely on is the lessons of leadership. People don't think about leadership very much in today's society, but it's one of the most important things you'll get from Jesuit. And the first rule about being a good leader is being a good follower, right? You have to learn to be a good follower before you are a good leader. And in 8th and 9th grade and 10th grade, you learn to follow. You follow the upperclassmen, you follow your teachers, you follow the priest, you follow the example of Christ. You become a good follower before you do anything. And then you become a leader. You become a leader, whether it's in forensics or theater or ROTC or sports or student government. The leadership lessons you learn are incredibly important to you. And yeah, there are born leaders, but those born leaders study a lot and understand about what it means to set an example and to lead through those examples and not point to your stripes. And that's something you'll always keep with you. The last thing I want to say about what will be with you forever, and it's the most important, is the spiritual enlightenment embodied in service to others and humility. Service to others is really what it's about. I mean, you had 20,000 hours of projects. You're doing soup kitchens beforehand. And that's something that will always stay with you. For so many people today, it's all about them all the time. And when you come from Jesuit, it's not about you. It's certainly not about you all the time. You are really meant for others. And I'm going to quote a few things in Scripture because I do believe humility and service go together. And I'm going to bring this together and again talk about COVID. It's all over the Bible. Micah, O mortal, what is good? He has shown you. What does the Lord require? To act justly and love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. Ephesians, be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. In 1 Peter chapter 5, all of you clothe yourself with humility towards one another. I mean, it couldn't be clearer that we are meant to be humble servants for other people. And if you don't get that by the time you finish high school, it's very difficult to get that, thereafter. But this is part of your body. It's part of your soul. It's part of your mind. It's going to be with you. And I want to tell you that my experience in Washington, D.C., there are a lot of people there for all kind of reasons, a lot of them self-serving. But let me tell you, the leaders of COVID, and again, every day I was in the Situation Room of the White House, where it all happens. Every single day I work with the Vice President. Most days I work with President Trump. But just about everybody around that table were people of faith who believed in God and asked for God's help. The Vice President, every day at the Situation Room, when we were making decisions that affected our country, our world, we started with a prayer every single day in the Situation Room. And we all asked to be God's servants and God's instruments on this earth to help heal the planet. Bob Redfield, who was a CDC director, devout Catholic servant, deployed many times with Catholic Charities to Haiti to help people after storms. And he felt it was his mission in life to make people healthier. And he spent his entire career working on people who had HIV and AIDS and working for cure. Francis Collins, who is the director of the NIH. You've probably seen Francis Collins. He was the director of NIH for 12 years. He was the director of the Genome Project that sequenced the human genome. Francis is a devout Christian, but he was an atheist until only a short period of time ago when he said, I'm going to see what this religion is all about, so I'm going to examine it just like a scientist would. And he had a moment, and I'll quote him when he said, I decided to explore the rational underpinnings of belief in God. I expected to find none and was astounded to discover that there are strong arguments from nature and philosophy that point to God's existence, but those do not constitute proof. Apparently, God intended to leave it up to us to make this decision. Perhaps such a leap of faith sounds rash to a committed materialist, but who can actually prove the existence of beauty or prove the existence of love? So Francis Collins, perhaps the peak of science, the CDC director, the leaders of our country were all deeply men of faith who were motivated to be humble servants to others. I'll talk about Ben Carson in a second because he was really truly our spiritual leader on that committee. So the first thing I want you to remember is that Jesuit education is going to be with you. And it's not really an education, it's more of an enlightenment. I called on discipline that I learned and got me through. I called on the leadership skills, and I always remembered that my role in the world is to be a man for others, to try to be humble and help others. And you'll have your own lessons, but those were for me. The second message I want to give you is that God has a plan for you, and don't doubt that. God has a plan for you. There is no way in the world that I could have wound up from the West Bank of New Orleans with no one in my family, only one person actually going to high school, to be able to go through this journey, through the Jesuit education, to be given the opportunities I have if there weren't a hand in that. And, you're going to have lots of different times in your life where you're just going to have faith. You're going to have to say, this opportunity is there. It may not be what I planned, but it's probably what I need to do. And what I ask you all to do is be open to it. Be open to the opportunities. The world is not going to be 30 years straight in the line. It's going to have a lot of twists and turns. I never thought a pediatrician would go to DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. But the government, the military was worried about biological warfare. And they were worried about pandemics, so I got pulled in to do that. I never thought I would actually be in the assistant secretary, making national policies for vaccines, for HIV, for hepatitis, writing the nutrition guidelines for America. By the way, we meet the nutrition guidelines today. That was very good. So always be open to that because God has a plan for you, and you have to have faith in that. And wherever the destination, you have a good roadmap because you've got the Jesuit education. Wherever that destination is, you'll get it. And I want to give an example, my last example, of Ben Carson, Secretary Ben Carson. Do you guys know Ben Carson? He's African-American, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, who also ran for president. He was known, first of all, as the chief of pediatric neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. He was the top pediatric neurosurgeon in the world. He's also a very deeply religious man. And he told me his story, and he's not shy about it, I just didn't know it, because we became very close. And he was sort of the spiritual leader of the task force, if there was a spiritual leader. So he grew up in Detroit. And I mean the wrong side of Detroit. If there's a wrong side of Detroit, he grew up in it. He grew up in utter poverty, in a single-family home with lots of violence all over, and he was angry. He was an absolutely angry young man. So one day when he was in 9th grade, he was 14 years old, he got in an argument with a friend of his about what radio station they were playing. Yeah, we had radios back then, so he was playing the wrong station. Ben Carson got angry. The Ben Carson we all know. He took a knife out of his pocket and plunged it into one of his best friends. God had a plan for him, though. that knife hit a belt buckle, and his friend was not stabbed. This was a moment for Ben that he got so frightened about his anger. He said he literally locked himself into a bathroom for 8 hours, and he kept repeating one line of scripture, and that's from Proverbs, who said, "One who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and one whose temper is controlled than one who captures a city." And from that moment on, he became the Ben Carson we know. In fact, you always look at him, he looks like he was asleep in the presidential debates, but that is because when he was 14-year-old, he made a deal, if you will, that he was going to always control his temper. And he was given that gift and a plan, and he decided later on that that knife was a metaphor, that he was no longer going to use it to hurt someone else, but he was going to use it to become a brain surgeon for children. That's a pretty remarkable story. So I want to say that God had a plan for Ben Carson, very clearly. I think he has a plan for me. I don't know what the next journey is, and I can guarantee you he's got a plan for each of you. And you're going to be successful at whatever you do, because you have the Jesuit training, you have the Jesuit education, you have the Jesuit enlightenment. I know you won't be trapped by power and money. There's nothing wrong with having power. There's nothing wrong with having money. Just don't be trapped by them. If you don't have power, you can't do good things for other people. You can't make the changes in the world that we need to make. And if you have money, if you use it to support education, the underserved, your church, charities, that's all good things, but use them for others. So again, I didn't know what you expected to hear today, but I knew what I wanted to tell you. I knew what I wanted to tell you is that 44 years later, the Jesuit education, the Jesuit enlightenment I received is as vibrant and alive in me today as it is in you right now, about ready to graduate. And what you've developed here, I'm not going to say the rest of life is a piece of cake. It's not. There are going to be challenges. It's going to be hard. But your Jesuit education, your Jesuit enlightenment, and all the things you learned give you all the tools you need. You don't need any other tools. You've got the tools. They've been given to you. You've been blessed by them. You've learned to utilize them. Call on them whenever you need them. Always be a person for others. Think about that. Be humble. This is a little bit out of the sequence, but everybody said I was so calm when doing television interviews. I tried to be humble. It was not about me. It's not about me being on TV. It's about trying to transmit some information to the rest of the country. And when I didn't know something, I just said I didn't know it, but I would try to find out for it, because we don't know things. People will appreciate you for that. So your Jesuit education will be alive and with you, and God has a plan. And with that, I just want to say thank you. It's truly an honor to be back here. It took me 3 years to get here. I wouldn't have missed this for anything. And God bless all of you. God bless the priests and everyone who dedicates their life to you. I love the school, and I hope your love grows for it as much as mine has grown over the past 44 years. Thank you.